How's it going, y'all? Aiden Anderson here with another round of Candidate Candids. In this series, we talk to candidates running in the local elections to learn more about them, their platform, and what they hope to do in office if elected. We're focusing on the county level races this year, and in this video, we've got the incumbent Latah County Commissioner, John Bohman. Let's get into it. One thing that's unique about you in this race is I believe you are the only incumbent as far as the commissioner race goes. So you've been in the position for roughly 20 months now, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
What have been your biggest takeaways from being a part of the Latah County Board of Commissioners so far?
I think the interaction of all the different departments and all the different things that the county itself does. I mean, you got building permits, you got zoning, you got marriage license and assessment and collection of taxes, disbursement of taxes to all the other taxing districts. We get it all. The sheriff's office, whether they're just patrolling, serving papers. There's so many jobs that go along inside the county that I wasn't aware of prior to being elected.
I don't think that very many people are really fully aware of what the role of county commissioner entails, whether or not they're running for the office or not. What have been the biggest sort of either misconceptions or novelties that came to mind when you started taking up the position, doing the job, that sort of thing?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is on people's minds is taxes. And they think that we can tax our way into oblivion as far as what we can assess. And we are limited by the state as far as a 3% increase in our budget each year, which I knew we had some constraints, but I didn't know they were that close. And then the property tax assessments those are all driven by market data, and the assessor has to have the county assessment within 10% above or 10% below the actual market value. So just all the statistical analysis that goes into each one of the parcels that's being reevaluated every 5 years was kind of mind-blowing to me, and how much work they put into every one of those assessments to make sure they're as accurate as they can be.
So it's both a combination of the process, just like you said, how much work has to go into each of these things as they prepare it every tax season, but then also the nature of the job as regards what people think you guys can do with taxes and what you can actually do with taxes.
Right.
And I guess one question that comes to mind, everybody gets real tense about taxes anyway, because it's just the nature of the conversation, but of the money that you guys do get, how effectively are you guys able to spread it? The clerk's office comes down with kind of a rough budget, and they talk to each one of the departments and the department heads and elected officials to come up with what kind of plans do they have in the future. If it's a capital project, it's got to go through the capital projects committee. So we try to take a 5-year look ahead as far as what things might be coming down the road and what prioritization that we have to get those done. And all the department heads that we've worked with, and we meet with them as commissioners to go through their budget and their budget requests for the next fiscal year. And they're really good conservatively as far as saying, hey, I have a new software package coming up, or we would like to have this, or whether we need to replace the car. They're really good as far as looking forward and knowing what their budget's going to be, just not only for this next coming fiscal year, but planning ahead for the future. And so it's really been kind of a painless process working with all the department heads and the elected official, which I thought that was going to be my biggest issue and discomfort, is working through the budget process. And it's been relatively painless, and we get to the point where the amount of tax dollars that you're going to be able to generate isn't going to meet the demands. We go to each one of them and ask them for cuts that they can make, and they've always been more than receptive to that and know that we're all together instead of one department against the other. And that's hearing that it was relatively painless is really interesting to hear, just after all of the seeming tension around just budgeting for some really difficult years when you've been around with just unexpected costs that the county has accrued and ways that the state has been moving money around. So it's actually really encouraging to hear that at what would seem to be the more painful or more uncomfortable periods of time, that the process itself works as intended.
One thing that comes to mind, since you brought up interdepartmental conflict, at the county, you're dealing with you're representing a large sector of people working in a myriad of different positions with different specialities, agendas, that sort of thing. How do you go about, as a commissioner, resolving any potential conflicts or disputes that might arise, either within the county or within your own circles of people?
First of all, with the whole chain, it goes to the department head first, or the elected official, to try to resolve those conflicts. And if it comes to us or myself, my comment to all the people here is my door is always open. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted to be like a commissioner and an employee type position. We're all individuals here, and we all have our own way of thinking. And I want to make sure that I understand the situation entirely before I weigh on it or before I try to make a decision, because we all have perceptions of how the problem or an issue is. So that's how I kind of approach it. And if I'm a face-to-face guy, mm-hmm. So if there's an issue, I always try to go and talk to them one-on-one as far as how I can perceive them and how they think about it, and get their take on the facts. And I'm a kind of a factual guy. I want to know the facts. I know we all get emotional about things, and I do too. But when it comes to this position and following policy, it's important to have all the facts. Mm-hmm.
Looking at, so people who don't necessarily know all that the county's involved in or what they do, when it comes down to answering questions that they might have about what's going on at the county, or, hey, I have a problem with the county, how do you make the whole system that is the county more approachable to them?
Well, if it comes directly to me, I'll just say what kind of issue you're having, whether it be property tax values, or whether it be not wanting to build a new building. It's up to me to decide, okay, where to go. And it is kind of daunting, because I remember coming up here years ago going, do I go to the assessor's office, do I go to the clerk's office, do I go to planning and building? And so it does get to be a little daunting as far as knowing exactly who has the right information, whether it's treasurers or assessment. So we have 13 department heads and different departments in here and elected officials. So it's ask the questions is the biggest thing, because all the people that are in the various offices will know pretty well where to send a person. And then if there's a complaint about the county, the direction of the county, the finances of the county, that's us commissioners. We deal with the policies of the county and the budgeting of the county. The department heads and elected officials take care of their offices, on a day-to-day basis, and we don't get involved in that because they're the professionals that know what they're doing, the experts in that field. Mm-hmm. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, perfectly. I got one question, just thinking back on the past 20 months of you being mm-hmm. a commissioner, and this is kind of a two-parter. First of all, is there anything that you look at that either you have achieved or the county collectively has achieved while you've been in office that you are particularly proud of? And then on the other side of it, is there anything that has happened sort of under your watch you're like, man, I wish I could have done that differently?
Well, first of all, the biggest thing I think is we were awarded capital projects funds from the state for a broadband project. So we're getting that moving forward. There's been a few interruptions in that, but we're still trying to keep that on track. So that's a great thing, but I kind of got into that because that was kind of going before me, but mm-hmm. I still want to make sure that's going to be very successful and we're able to complete that project and hopefully get funding to go into the next phase so we can expand that project.
Yeah, because that's a long haul project. You're not in that for 1 year and then it's done and then it's taken care of. Now you got to keep at it if anything is going to be done with it at all.
Yeah, now we're kind of an idea we're putting in the interstate is the first project, then we're going to start putting in the state highways and then the county roads. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the overview of what is going on. We have moved to a different salary schedule here at the county, which came with a lot of trepidation. Mm-hmm. And the point of that is trying to make it equitable throughout the county based on market conditions. So I think in the long haul, it's going to get some of that one department against another department, And so we have kind of a plan laid out exactly where we need to be and where we should be. And I think it takes some of that subjectivity out of the wage structure within the county. I think eventually it's going to be good. There's some growing pains, but hopefully looking forward that it'll clear things up and make it more transparent for not only the public, not only commissioners, but also the employees also.
Yeah, I mean, people are already generally uncomfortable with big changes happening all at once, and particularly when that comes down to how do they make money. So that's understandable as far as trepidation that needs to be assuaged, but then hopefully it sounds like you guys are going to get through it and it'll be a better system overall for anybody who wants to work here. So
that's the goal. That's the goal. And then our benefits committee, we've increased some of the benefits to the employees. So it might be small incremental changes, but it's a small change now that hopefully we can get, it's a share of the dependents' health insurance and stuff. Like I said, little incremental changes that don't cost a lot, but it might make a big deal to somebody in the future as part of the benefits package.
Yeah, 100%, especially with how long people tend to stay with the county as far as, you have lifelong sheriff's deputies, you have lifelong people in the clerk's office, and which I imagine makes for a really cohesive structure as opposed to one where you're getting a ton of people coming in and out all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the employees here are absolutely wonderful to work with, and they've been a valuable asset that I can lean on and say, especially my first 6 months to a year here, saying, hey, how does this process work? And they're going, oh, this is the way it works. 20 years or 15 years ago, it worked this way. So they have so much experience and so much knowledge of what has been behind us, and helps us create that direction going forward. So, I mean, it's been amazing. I know they probably aren't as upset now, but I know probably the first 6 months they were kind of tired of seeing me walking in the door and asking a bunch of questions, but they were all wonderful answering and tried to help me out the best they could going forward. So
excellent, excellent. Well, let me allow you to do some free advertising. Are there any job openings at the county where you think, ah, man, we could really use help here for people?
I go to the Latah County. They have the job openings there. A lot of the departments, will have their openings posted there. We've had, I know there's some positions open in the prosecuting attorney's office. We have a position open there. They haven't had very many applicants, so I know that's one place. If there's some good lawyers out there that want to come work for the county, and from what I hear, the office upstairs is a great place to work. So,
well, you heard it here first, folks. Now, obviously, being a county commissioner is not all that you do as a person. I know you were very much involved in the Troy Fire Department prior to being elected. Are you still involved to an extent?
I'm still a volunteer there. Prior to being elected and after I was elected, I was serving as the chief down there, because I think I was the oldest serving person that they said, you got the job now. And I still farm for the family farm. This is told to me as a 60% position as far as time constraints. Latah County does not, the commissioners do not deal with road and bridges. North Latah Highway District and South Latah Highway District are separate districts, separate taxing entities that have separate commissioners, and they take care of all the road and bridge. And talking to other county commissioners in the area, that takes a lot of time. So that's why the position here is not paid at a full-time position, and doesn't take as much time as counties that have road and bridges.
Well, that answers my next question, which is going to be, how on earth do you have all the time to do all of that? Because it does seem like, you're juggling. It does seem from an outsider's perspective that you might be juggling multiple full-time jobs. So that is at least good to hear. And some.
Yeah, during the season, we have spring planting, we have harvest, and we have fall planting, and so my time is pretty constrained there. And the other two commissioners, Commissioner LaFortune and Commissioner Lamar, understand that, have picked up some of those duties that I have to help me out. And then when it gets to the point in the wintertime or in the fall after all the seasonal work's done, I have the time that I can let them do things, and I can be here and answer questions and talk within the employees and the departments and do the day-to-day stuff that they did for me back when I was busy.
And that's wonderful to have as an option. During the fires this past year, because we've had a few of them now, were you acting in your capacity as Troy Fire Chief during those events, or were you just another volunteer among folks out there?
So on the Cedar Creek fire, when I got there, I was in contact with our disaster services, Mr. Steve Riskin, and I was in contact with our chairman, Tom Lamar, and we were setting up. I was giving him kind of a boots on the ground assessment of the area. So, excuse me, at times I was dealing with that, and once Tom, that's kind of this trade-off. He was taking care of it and getting all the different people together. So for some time, I was flip-flopping back and forth on the phone with both sides of it, but I was kind of the commissioner that was out in the public. I was in constant contact with the IDL and the incident command to make sure, as a county commissioner, what I needed to do, anything there. I was in contact with the sheriff's office as far as evacuations and that. So I wasn't taking a leadership role as far as getting the disaster declarations and the evacuation routes out, but I was a commissioner with boots on the ground, in case something had to be conveyed to the rest of the commissioners, or we did do emergency declarations and that type of stuff. So I was involved, not 100% because I was doing my firefighting side, portion of it too, but so I was kind of wearing two hats at one time.
Impressive. So you did come back home smelling like smoke then, I assume?
Many nights, yes.
All right. I was hearing plenty of intense stories out of the sheriff's office in terms of like how close certain things got and how hot it got and all of the different stories, especially out of the Gwen fire situation, because that was going on for some time. Do you have any stories like that as far as like intense experiences or close calls?
On the Gwen fire, I wasn't directly involved in initial attack or firefighting there. I was on the east side. We actually have a farm there, and so we wanted to, as private landowners, private farmers, we wanted to keep a fire line. So we went out and on our own cropland did some fire line there to try to keep it from moving. Try to keep that eastern side from spreading. So I was doing that, and I was in contact with Mr. Riskin about the impacts to Latah County, but most of it was in Nez Perce County. We got pretty lucky. It didn't progress much into Latah. So.
I know there were some joint efforts going on at the time, but I suppose it being in different parts of the county or not in the county at all does change how you do communications and that sort of thing, or at least it did for the emergency alert side of things.
Yes.
Does it similarly reflect, like, were you guys not allowed to go into Nez Perce County to fight fires there, or were you sending people over to help with that as well?
So with the area fire departments here in Latah County, we have a mutual aid agreement with the Idaho Department of Lands. So once they request our services, I know our fire department has a protocol as far as how many vehicles we can take out of our district at one time. So if they ask us, we've helped them on the Bedrock fire a couple years ago, 4 years ago. We've been on the Sand fire, and as an additional resource, we have a great collaboration of all the rural volunteer fire departments and the Moscow volunteers, and we have great collaboration with departments across state lines, across county lines. So it works. It's worked out really well.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I might be showing my ignorance here because I don't remember a year quite like this as far as fires in close proximity to Latah County go. But on the whole, from your experience as a fire chief for so long, is this an atypical year for fires as far as frequency or intensity?
Actually, this year I was just speaking with some of our members on the Walton fire up here, and we've been dispatched on mutual aid to a number of big fires in our area, which is usually pretty rare. I mean, I think last year we were called out to one wildland fire as a department. So it seems like the intensity of the fires and the proximity within Latah County are definitely greater this year than they have been in the past.
And I suppose it's difficult to say, immediately, oh, that's clearly because of XYZ or something like that. But are there any theories that are floating around that you know of as to why that might be?
The one we had out on our farm, it was a lightning strike. We caught the one tree that was on fire, and the fire department come out. We put it out and got it all mopped up. Come to find out, it struck another tree about 250 yards north that we didn't see, and it didn't start until the wind. This year, we have seemed like the Gwen fire was lightning strike, and the one out on our farm was lightning strike, and we had one on. So I think we have more of that dry lightning. We don't have those intense thunderstorms with a lot of rain that we used to have years ago. I'm not saying it's a climate change thing, but it definitely has been different this year than we've had in the past. We've had some lightning strikes in the past, but usually the rain comes in and it's pretty easy to control. But this year it seems like it's made it more difficult for us, especially with some of the winds that we've had.
I know the winds have been on a lot of people's minds just in light of what they've done on their own with the dust storm that came through town, which I can't remember the last time there's been a dust storm proper in Moscow, but it was pretty intense to see.
It was.
Well, changing gears a little bit, I want to talk about the campaign now, as far as leading up to campaigning for in this year's election. What is it like campaigning for the position of commissioner while also juggling all of your other obligations and responsibilities?
That's difficult. When I campaigned the first time 2 years ago, I had some extra time, you know, I could take time off the farm and go do the things and do more events than I have done now. But with the commissioner taking portion of my time, then, so basically it's kind of 2 3/4 time jobs that you're trying to put into a full-time job, and then you're trying to throw some campaign on it. So as far as juggling the time to going out and campaigning and going to all the events, it has been difficult, and I like to do it all, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and we do have to sleep. So, and we do have to spend time with our families too. So it's been difficult to juggle all those different times and the time constraints of the campaign.
Yeah, you bring up family. Tell me about your family. Tell me a little bit about them.
So my wife and I have been married for 22 years. She has been an elementary educator, Troy Elementary, for 24. And we have a daughter. She's a senior at the University of Idaho in ag business, and a son at Troy High School, and he's 15. Our family's pretty tight-knit. I farm with my brother and my 2 nephews, so it's still a family. It's still in the family homestead there. So we spend time in the house. We love watching college and pro football. And my wife is an avid gardener, and so she does that while I'm busy during the summertime. And we like to do some camping. My son loves to fish, so he's likes to go bass fishing. And we used to do a lot of snowmobiling because that was my off time. And and we like to travel. I have some relation up in the Post Falls area, so we go up and visit them and stay with them quite often. So family's very important to me and our family. That's just what I've been used to ever since I grew up.
And it very much sounds like, you know, taking on the family business. Do you think it's likely that your son or your daughter will take over the farm from you guys at some point, or are you going to wait and see what happens with that?
We'll wait and see what happens. My daughter's interested in it. She runs, helps us out driving tractor in hay season and harvest and stuff. So she definitely has interest there. My son just took one of those career assessment things on the computer, and he says, "Guess what it was, Dad? I'm a farmer." I says, "Wow." And he shows some interest this year. He helps us on the farm too, but I think he has different aspirations and a different outdoor field than farming. But we'll see.
Yeah,
change.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Like I say, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. So.
Likewise.
Yes.
So happy to hear that we're all in the same boat there. Just going back to the campaign for a bit, you know, obviously it's an intense election year because of everything that's going on at the national scene, but that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what's going on at the local level. But all the same, people think about things in terms of what are the stakes that are raised when it comes to any given election season. So they're looking at the national election and thinking, okay, what are the stakes if someone wins or someone loses or what have you? Are there any particular things that you see, are there any particular issues when it comes to the county that are at stake when it comes to the daily running of things that may change dramatically depending on who gets elected this year?
You know, I can't really speak, you know, for the other candidates that are out there. I think with this position, you know, we have 2 different parties running, 3 different parties running, which I'm not so sure we can't create laws. We have ordinances and resolutions, all we do. And our duties as a county are pretty much defined by Idaho code, as far as the different departments. And so I think it's more of a personality thing. It's, you can't get too, my personal opinion, I can't get too excited about certain events or certain things that happen. You got to have kind of a cool head, and you got to look at both sides of it. And that's why I was asked to run in the first place, was because I don't have a political agenda. I'm not saying we're going to cut taxes, we're going to raise taxes, we're going to build new buildings, we're going to get rid of all the police. I don't have that. I just want to make sure that the county keeps on functioning the correct way and going forward. Do we need to make some tweaks? Possibly, but I don't think big, crazy shifts in the day-to-day business of a county or even a private business is warranted, because it shakes things up so much. So the other candidates I've talked to, we laugh and talk about things. And so, as far as coming down to the nitty-gritty stuff, I feel that one of my advantages is the 20 years of experience, 20 months of experience that I've had here. Because the first year was for sure a huge learning curve for me, and I'm still learning bits and pieces as I go, but I kind of understand the fluidity around here and how things kind of work and what process has to go through. Government goes a lot slower than we do in private business, but it's good. You make sure that you're doing things correctly, legally, and you're looking at all aspects of the Latah County residents and the people that you're serving.
It does seem like you're bringing up the point about change and stability, and that, I think, is a huge point when it comes down to, election season. There are a lot of promises that are made just all over the board that, having been in government, you can look at and say, oh, that'll take about 3 times as long to implement as you think it might when you're talking about it on stage. And yet, at the same time, the idea of, I'm going to keep things running the same way that they have been because I want things to be stable, is not always what people are looking to hear necessarily when they're going and hearing campaigns. But maybe you've had a different experience.
Well, I think, when I talk about I want to keep it going, I don't want to make drastic changes in our daily operations or even a year. One of the things that I said when I first started running, I want to have kind of a long-term plan for this county as far as going forward, because the commissioners, we have 2-year, then 4-year and 2-year, they can move back and forth and they can change at every 2 years. So you could get a slight change in direction, which is fine, but if we have these long-term employees that have been here for so long, knowing how things have gone forward, so having them have a roadmap going forward, no matter which commissioners are here, I think is a valuable thing that they can look back and say, here, like me, if I came in here, here's our plan going forward. Oh, okay, it was approved. That sounds reasonable to me. I'll be on board. So that's kind of my thing going forward, if re-elected, is to keep that long-term plan and make it a living document so we can change that as we go forward. Once goals are met, let's put a new goal out there and try to make the service the best it can in Latah County.
And like you said, things moving at the speed of government, however much of a joke that is,
right.
It is also the nature of, well, if you can keep working at the same thing steadily and effectively over a long period of time, there's a whole lot more that you can accomplish than if you're, zigging to one side and zagging to the other back and forth all the time because of, and like you said, it makes sense that you want to make your employees who've been around here for a lot longer and have been chomping at the same bit for a good while longer, give them the ability to continue to do so, ultimately because it makes their lives easier, and then also because you can get a whole lot more done as far as the things that a county is supposed to do. We've brought up a couple times throughout this that there are a lot of things that the county relies on the state for, as far as how they're able to do different financial levies, or how they're able to interact with certain kinds of legislation. Is there anything that you're watching there as far as things you would like to see brought before the state on behalf of Latah County, or things that the state is likely to do that will impact things?
Going to the funding, we're limited on our operational budget each year. We can only increase it by 3%. And you go back to the inflationary period that we've seen in the last 2 years. we at the county see those same inflationary costs, whether it be benefits to our employees, whether it be liability insurance for the county, gas, tires, copy paper. So I feel like we've been behind on that. I would like to see a revision of that cap, possibly to take into account inflation so it can move or be no less than 3%. A thing that other counties have done years ago was a local option tax, is where you can increase the sales tax in Latah County by 0.5% or whatever percentage, and that's a way to generate income for like capital improvements such as buildings. This building is built in '52, you know, and the buildings only have such a lifespan. So that's again looking forward. You know, how can we go to fund that? Right now, the only way we can do that is through bonds. And that is through a bond election, and it takes 66 2/3% of the residents to approve that. And with the special options tax, we're unique here, I think, in Latah County, is we have two university towns next to each other. So a lot of that revenue from the sales tax will be gained from people that don't reside here. Right now, if we go through a bond, it's the landowners that pay property taxes that would have to pay for that. With the special options tax, we could get the students that are only here for 9 months who go out to the local businesses, you know, and do business with them. They could pay a portion of that. The people that come in for the football games on the weekends, you know, so we could get some of that revenue from other than just the Latah County residents.
And from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's the sort of thing that you could turn off and on depending on whether or not it's needed for a particular capital project. Right now, it's not an option at all.
Not an option at all.
But it could be, and then depending on how you use it, that would be how you would use it going forward if it was available to you. But right now, it would just be interesting, if I'm hearing you correctly, it would be interesting to see if it was a possibility that you guys could make use of it.
And it's been mentioned to the legislature in Boise, and some of the people down there is a no starter, but some of the area counties, they've built buildings and paid them off in a very short amount of time with the use of that tax. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah,
I think that, and when it goes back again to not just Latah County landowners or house owners are paying for it, we're relying on getting money from other people, from other states, from other towns that will help us deal with that. And it's just one way for me to think that we can lessen the burden, the property tax burden on the residents of Latah County. And I would like to see it pointed, you know, directly to capital improvements such as buildings. And I'm not trying to look for an influx to change our operational budget by using the special options tax, because we need to be fiscally responsible. We need to make sure we don't inflate the budget. But in these inflationary times, the current constraints we have through property tax levies to increase our budget by only 3% makes it tough in inflationary times.
Right, right. Like there's only so much you can already do, and then in a situation like this, yeah, that makes sense. Going to bring up a couple different recent conversations that have been going on in the county, because I'm sure people want to hear about those. There's been the conversation about, obviously there's a conversation going on about the jail, which is very much more in the, as far as I can tell, the sheriff's side of things. But one question I would bring up to you is, you know, as the sheriff has been talking about it, they've been talking about it as though it has been an issue for some time, that the jail has needed work for a little while now. And then for a number of members of the public, at least how they're communicating it to me, it's as though they're hearing about it for the first time. And so my question to you is, has it been sort of has it been an option in the back of, like on the back burner or in the back of people's minds that, we got to do something about this? Or is this really just coming to a head at this particular moment?
I think it's a little of both there, because, you know, we've been hearing my predecessor, Mr. McGraw, you know, he talked about it, you know, when we were in the type of things, you know, there are certain jail standards that are out there. Those jail standards have changed. This jail was built in 1972 and met all the standards at that time. And so as we go forward, how do we meet those based on the physical plant that we have? You know, it's in a basement, which gives you very little opportunity to move or change the footprint and stuff. So it's been on the radar for some time, as far as someday we were going to get to the point where we won't meet those standards, and how can we? And then it's a capital thing too, you know. I mean, when you start trying to move stuff, and that's all concrete down there. So it's, when do you say no on? It's kind of like a used car, you know. You keep on replacing stuff. What do you say? Enough's enough, you know. So it's to the point, you know, that we have some improvements that need to be made, and so I think it's, in the past, I think they've been made, but now we're to the point where, okay, is this the right path forward? So the sheriffs are still coming up with some of the concerns, the numbers, and those will be presented to us, exactly what the options are. You know, and we just don't know. But it's come to a head now. It's like, how much money do we keep on putting into that place, and how long is that improvement going to last?
And you have to be able to walk out all the different lines of thinking on that, as to whether or not, okay, if we go with option A, here are the logistics we're going to have to solve with that, or the finances that play into that. Or if we go with option B, completely different set of logistics and finances, but we still have to have those conversations, and trying to make decisions right away in the heat of the moment when people are just learning about it doesn't sound like it's the right way to go.
And I've had some conversations with some people, you know, and I'm really optimistic with some of the conversations that I've had, as far as building different, having different ideas about the path forward for the county as far as buildings. This building, the jail, you know, right now we house offices in multiple different buildings throughout the county, and I've heard some complaints that we need to have them all in one. That gets to be a financial responsibility for the taxpayers of Latah County to say, yes, we want to, and then commit to the next however many years it takes to pay that off. So it's kind of you know, wide open right now, and we're just trying to get some public input and get some final ideas from the sheriff's office about how to go forward before we try to make that decision.
Yeah. The other topic that has come up recently at the county has been the possibility of forming an affordable housing, or a housing authority. And I know that the commissioners are still going around to the rural cities giving their pitch. I saw the one when it was presented in Moscow. I don't know how the others have gone necessarily, but I'm hearing that it's, you know, like with these other issues, they're taking the first step, and we're waiting to see what the results will be in order to move forward with a project like this. But do you have a sense, as things have gone from your perspective, as to how far out we might get from getting more answers on that? Or is it just a matter of, hey, we've done our thing and we need to sit and wait and figure it out?
Well, we went to we've gone to the various small cities, and because one of my ideas was, let's make sure this is a countywide optional type thing, you know, because even though the Moscow is by far the largest city and has probably the most people that, or the least amount of extra housing within Moscow, the small cities have those too. And as you can't afford Moscow, you go out to the small cities. But we wanted to present that idea out there because it's about the only thing that we as commissioners at the county can do, is the state has given us that authority to develop a housing authority. And that allows them to be their own entity in which they can buy and sell land, and their main goal is to provide safe and affordable housing. We have a number of entities here in Moscow, the Moscow Housing Trust and Habitat for Humanity, that are doing that now. We're just trying to, if we get a housing authority, can we do it at a greater scale? And it allows they can go get grants, they can get donations from people. So we're trying to make it a little bit bigger so it's more pronounced, so people are aware of it, and maybe we can get some of that funding to do bigger projects throughout the county, rather than the great work that the other organizations have done. We're just hoping to expand that and do it on a bigger scale.
Yeah. I imagine the scope of those bigger projects, it's pretty hard to tell right now just because nothing exists yet. But the hope would be that, you know, when people think of solutions to housing problems, there are quite a few ideas, I imagine, that get played with. And so it's a matter of getting to that point to be able to play with those ideas. Just bringing it back to the election for a little bit, it seems like a lot of what, because of the nature of the jobs at the county level, it seems like it's primarily, when people think of things in terms of partisan politics, the county is a bit of a category error there because it doesn't really function the same way.
No.
And yet, for the sake of the elections, you end up playing into two-party politics because that's just the nature of how the elections go. So what are principles that you use for navigating that space where there's, it's not really a partisan job, but it gets treated partisanly in the elections because that's just what people look for? How do you navigate that as somebody who's campaigning?
I don't, when I want to make a statement, I don't really look at it, is it Democratic or is it Republican? Because it's a county thing. At the state legislature, they deal with those hot button topics that are looked at differently on one side versus the other side. They talk about 3 Democrats being on the board of county commissioners, and I will guarantee you that even though we're the same party, we do not agree on everything every day. So it's not like a rubber stamp. Looking forward, I don't know if a lot of the things that we deal with on a daily basis are partisan at all. As with all the different departments. I guess when you come down to fiscal responsibility and taxes, that gets to be perceived as partisan sometimes. But we try to do the best with what we can. And if we didn't have the cap, I'm not so sure we'd be a little bit above maybe, or maybe not. I think the wage structure overall, not individually, is fair. I think we're trying to make sure that we can compete with the current workers we have now, with the other large institutions that we have in the area. We have to keep those valuable employees. So I don't think that's a partisan issue. Maybe it is, but I don't think of it as that way. And so I really don't try to define myself in my political party realm when I go out and talk at these forums. I just try to do what I think is best for the county as a whole, and hopefully people agree with me.
Yeah. Well, I just have one more question for you, and that is just to give you the opportunity to say anything that you think that the members of the public should hear about you or your campaign, and then also where can people go to find out more about you?
So as far as going forward, I've really enjoyed the last 20 months. I was a little nervous and apprehensive when I first started as far as what the job entailed, and a lot of that was lack of knowledge and understanding of exactly the process here at the county. Once I've kind of come and gotten used to that and been more comfortable with it, I've really liked the people. I mean, the day-to-day interactions that I have are just wonderful, whether it be on a personal note, or whether it be on the county note. I feel like the 20 months of experience I have now, that I can actually go forward because I have that background knowledge and that education, and actually kind of work on things that the county has in problems and hopefully solve those. And I've got a little bit better networking as far as the people to ask from different counties and the state. So I'm just hoping that people give me the opportunity for another 4 years so I can use that education and the knowledge I've received in the last 20 months to go forward. So,
John, thank you so much for talking.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And that was our conversation with Commissioner John Bohman. As with all candidates, I highly encourage you to check them out yourself so that you can go into the election well prepared and educated. We'll have the relevant links posted with this video, and as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Aiden Anderson, and this has been Candidate Candids. We'll see you next time.